You really need to go out there and state what this means to you, to your industry, to your community.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Comstock channel. I'm Marlin Bohling with you. Always a pleasure to visit with you about ag-related issues. And welcome aboard. Today, I'm pleased to welcome onto the program Mr. Tom Buis, the CEO of the American Carbon Alliance. And we're going to talk about some new developments that happened late last week. And it had to do with the Treasury Department. I know a lot of folks are kind of confused by that, Tom. The Treasury Department was supposed to be issuing directives about new regulations related to what they call 45Z. First of all, maybe you can give our viewers and listeners a little background on what the heck 45Z even is, and why is it the Treasury Department that is issuing regulations on that? And then we'll get into the fact that I don't even know if we really got regulations. I think we just got to notice that there will be regulations or something. We'll talk about that too. So if you would, give us a little background on this whole thing.
Yeah, great to be on here, Marlin. 45Z is the tax code provision that was included in the Inflation Reduction Act. And that basically is the section that IRS regulates on who's going to get tax credits for doing certain things. And in this case, it's for capturing carbon, sequestering it, and allowing the various entities to be able to qualify as a low carbon index going forward to produce sustainable aviation fuel and higher blends in our case. So why is Treasury involved? It's because there is a tax credit involved in the process. And the tax credit is basically, it's not a get-rich scheme, but it allows the industry the time and affordability to be able to build out basically new programs. Capturing carbon is not cheap. Transporting it is not cheap. And they felt the policymakers, that's members of Congress, and the current administration felt that it needed a tax credit in order to get started. Now, the tax credit only lasts 3 years, so it's not forever, but that's why it's a Department of Treasury. We're always used to Department of Energy or Department of Agriculture or EPA issuing these guidances or rulemaking. And in the case of this, actually, the way Treasury does it is they issue guidance, not always rulemaking. Although the other day they did say that they were going to go and recommend rulemaking going forward, and everybody get their comments in by April 15th.
Okay, I think it was on, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was January 9th, where there was a bunch of news came out related to this. And a lot of folks thought that, well, we're getting the regulations or we're getting the guidelines today, but it didn't sound like that actually happened. If you can describe exactly what they did announce on that day.
They missed an opportunity to finalize the program and give certainty to all the interests who wanted to move forward. And by that, I mean they could have issued the guidance and included in there, all right, if you do X, Y, and Z, this is what your carbon score is going to be moving forward. They didn't do that. They just announced that they're going to announce it. And we're also, the second component of it is an updated GREET model. And if you remember back several months ago when they came out with a 40B guidance, it's a different tax code, they used an updated GREET model in order to calculate the carbon index. And that was beneficial for ethanol because it basically meant that if you capture carbon and sequester it in an ethanol plant, then you qualify as a low carbon fuel, which qualifies to be able to produce next generation fuels like sustainable aviation fuel, which is a huge new demand market. Yesterday or Friday's announcement, they weren't that explicit. They said the Department of Energy's updated GREET model will be coming. We're anticipating it this week. which will give us a clearer indication from the ethanol perspective on what it takes to qualify as this low carbon index fuel. Now, the rest of it has all been punted down the road. A good NFL playoff type term here, but they did punt. And they said, okay, the next administration, the Trump administration, can finalize the rulemaking on this. And so all eyes now shift from the outgoing administration to the new administration, Marlin. If that makes any sense, in Washington, that's common sense. But to you and I, it's probably not.
Well, there are some who have a fear that when you change the administration over, they could just throw the whole thing out the window. Is that even a possibility or not?
It's a possibility. We don't think that's going to happen, Marlin, because you have a lot of people in the energy space who have a stake in this, capturing carbon and moving forward. You have a lot of people in the environmental space who wanted to do this. There's been kind of a mantra from the environmental side for decades. Let's lower the amount of carbon going up into the air. So you have both people on both sides who are for it. And now some in the space are probably closer to the new administration than the previous administration. I'm talking about the oil industry. They're heavily invested in capturing carbon and sequestering it. The current administration was probably more leaning towards the environmental benefits of capturing carbon and moving forward. So either way, I think we got the support there. I think we have support in Congress. A lot of the key members in Congress, as we move forward in the leadership roles, therefore continue in this program. So I think it'll survive. I'm hopeful, but also very optimistic that the Trump administration will continue the program. They're very proud of the support they get in rural America. And rural America voted overwhelmingly for them. So I think that's another benefit. You've heard me say this before. This is rural America's opportunity to engage in the development of our energy fuels going forward, especially the new demand that's going to be created by sustainable aviation fuel, which every country in the world is mandating the airlines clean up their fuel. We can play a role in that if this 45Z gets done and done right. If not, it'll be Brazil. It'll be other countries that take advantage of that brand new market. So it's absolutely critical that both the current administration and the next administration support this program.
And that could actually dwarf the demand from the automobile industry, couldn't it?
About 50 billion gallons potential worldwide of sustainable aviation fuel. Now, we're not going to be able to do it all. Currently, sustainable aviation fuel is produced with oils and fats and greases, which there's not enough of those to produce the kind of volumes you're talking about. Capturing carbon at the ethanol plant and allowing that ethanol to qualify as a feedstock for sustainable aviation fuel significantly increases the feedstocks available for producing it and helps the United States and other countries meet their goals on sustainable aviation fuel. I think the current goal in the United States is 3 billion gallons of sustainable aviation fuel by 2030. Well, you're probably looking at 100 million gallons currently produced worldwide. So that's a significant step up in a very short order. And in order to do that, they got to have the approval for ethanol to qualify, number one. But you also have to have the investment that's necessary to be able to produce a sustainable aviation fuel, capture the carbon, sequester it, and that's why the tax credits come in. They're a way to help incentivize that build out of the infrastructure and the capability to make the fuel. And all that investments, we're talking billions of dollars. We're not talking about millions of dollars. So it's necessary to get it started.
Well, I know a lot of corn producers and ethanol producers are out there looking at this entire story and going, well, whether you have a 45Z or not, the ethanol is still the same, right? I mean, that you would use for sustainable aviation fuel.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of if you actually get credit for doing it environmentally, producing it, right?
Well, that and whether or not we qualify as a low carbon fuel. And Marlon, what we face in the ethanol industry has been people saying it's not environmentally beneficial. And our foreign buyers, every one of them says, if you're a low carbon fuel, it's a game changer. The same for states that have low carbon fuel standards. They want low carbon fuel. We've never had an official designation that says we're low carbon, even though we are low carbon. Having that certification through this 45Z process is absolutely fantastic. In fact, I contend that if they update this GREET model in the correct manner, ethanol from a carbon captured plant will be a lower carbon index than an EV, which is significant. And that's a certification that says that, which is really important. We want to be able to go out there and demonstrate to people that, yes, we are low carbon. We know we are. Most of the data shows we are, but we don't have that official stamp of approval. That's important.
I know the mantra of the Trump campaign during the election cycle was drill, baby, drill.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, they really want to ramp up domestic oil production, thinking that there's plenty of global demand for that and we can export a lot. I guess my question to you is, if we would ramp up our oil production in the U.S., what does that mean for ethanol? And I guess we're kind of shifting back toward the automotive side here right now, but doesn't that mean you also need increased ethanol demand to match that or not?
Oh, absolutely. Right now, every gallon sold in the United States is at least 10% ethanol. So if you increase that demand or the production, and this goes worldwide, which a lot of countries are looking at upping the amount of ethanol in their base fuel, then that's beneficial. And, it also keeps the opportunity for an internal combustion engine to meet all the environmental goals that people have set out. Personally, I've always felt, if your goal is X, why limit the opportunities for whatever feedstock to be able to meet X? And that's important. It's really important because, as I just mentioned, if you consider the facts, ethanol is cheaper. Ethanol blend is cheaper than, or more environmentally beneficial and cheaper than an electric vehicle.
Now, what about soybean producers? How are they impacted by this 45Z?
Well, they're impacted in a number of manners. One, they can produce sustainable aviation fuel, and that's important. That's a market for them. But also the foreign competition that maybe or may not enter the market through this used cooking oil issue, and how that will impact biodiesel and the oil producers, soybean oil producers, is significant. That's a major issue because unused cooking oil qualifies as a feedstock for sustainable aviation fuel. However, there's at least charges out there that a lot of this new unused cooking oil coming in the United States is actually not unused. It's coming from palm oil, which has pretty well been banned in most places around the country because of the various challenges in producing it. So it's a huge issue, and everybody I think the probably the key takeaway, Marlin, is everyone wants certainty. It's tough to operate if you don't know what the rules are, and if they don't give us certain rules and spell it out, it's just impossible.
So are we awaiting a separate set of additional rules just that would apply to soybeans?
Well, the whole 45Z, yeah, and how it's all finalized will definitely impact them. And that's why I think you've seen probably the comments from every organization involved is this was much ado about nothing. We need that certainty. And you missed an opportunity here, Treasury, to be able to give rural America the certainty that we need to move forward and providing a new demand. And you and I have talked about this forever. We're in a situation in the agriculture sector where company after company is laying off more workers. You're not seeing a profitable price in the marketplace. Demand exceeds supply, and we need a new market. This helps give us a new market. New demand is important, and it's important because it's creating a market from the marketplace for farmers, a profit from the marketplace, not a handout from the federal government, which is often the alternative.
So if we get the final regulations from the Treasury Department, would that give a boost to pipeline construction then?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, the pipeline, we're making progress every month. And, you know, we've seen Iowa approve the permit for the main line there. We've seen North Dakota approve 2 permits, one for the pipeline and one for the sequestration sites. We've seen Minnesota approve a pipeline spurt over to an ethanol plant in Minnesota and connecting up in North Dakota. We're waiting on South Dakota. We're waiting on a second permit from Iowa, which adds more plants. Now it's up to like 57 ethanol plants to be connected. And then we got county by county approval requirements in Nebraska. And all that's coming forward. But the 45Z, allowing basically the ethanol plant that captures your carbon and sequesters it, is an absolute boost to the pipeline. It's also a boost to those ethanol plants that live in the areas where the geology is such that they can pump it straight into the ground, like the Eastern Corn Belt, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, those areas. They don't need a pipeline, so huge opportunity for the ethanol industry.
Now, you mentioned that the Treasury Department is actually asking for public comment on this, right?
Yes.
Give us the dates again, and if somebody wants to file a comment, how do they do that?
Well, it'd be on the website, and they can certainly contact us if they need help in doing so. But it's April 15th, and that's ironically, I think that's tax day, the day your taxes are due. So it's not a hard process. They have a site where you can just enter your comments directly, and you can make them as extensive and in depth as you want, or as simple as you want. And you know, if you're a farmer out there listening to this, you ought to go on there and certainly weigh in. What's this mean to you? What's it mean to get a new market out here and a profitable price from the marketplace? What's this mean for rural counties that are struggling with their revenues to support schools and vital services? This is jobs. This is profitability for farmers. It's a great thing.
Important if we have a changeover in personnel at the heads of all these different agencies. I believe they would probably be more receptive to public comments where they're new at the job like that.
Absolutely. You know, the world belongs to those who weigh in. I firmly believe that. If you just sit back and hope, that's a risky strategy. But you really need to go out there and state what this means to you, to your industry, to your community. Politicians and agency heads and all those people, they want to know that. And oftentimes, a lot of your listeners and a lot of people I deal with, they'll just assume people in Washington or the policymakers or the agency heads that they know what this means to them. And you know what happens if you assume. And that's always not a pleasant strategy.
Well, Tom, it's always great to talk with you. Thank you for updating us on the latest developments that came out of the Treasury Department here just a few days ago. So now we'll see how things shake out. So we have a public comment period until about April 15th. Make sure that you want to weigh in, pro or con, I guess, if you have comments about this, and make sure you make your opinion heard. I appreciate the information, Tom. Good to visit, and we'll talk again soon, I'm sure. Tom Buis, the CEO of the American Carbon Alliance. And that'll do it for this episode. Thanks again for joining us. For producer Breanne Jenkins, I'm Marlin Bohling. And yep, we'll catch you next time right here on the Comstock channel.
Futures trading involves risk. The risk of loss in trading futures and or options is substantial, and each investor and or trader must consider whether this is a suitable investment. Past performance is not indicative of future results.